Choir Boy to impact the most? And what was it? What was your vision for it when writing?
Well, when creating Choir Boy for the first time, the first draft of it, it was really a conversation with myself, an intense conversation about trying to find my own voice and my own individuality, but also really missing and loving my community where I'm from. I'm from Liberty City in Miami. And I really wanted to talk about how hard it can be to figure out how to be at once all for your community and all for yourself, because they both have to be equal, right? You can't just take care of one, you have to take care of both. And figuring that out at the age that I was trying to in high school, it just seemed like an impossible task. There always seemed to be like institutions that just, had rules that were going to leave me out. But then at the same time, I felt like, well, isn't it my job to make sure that my community thrives and the legacy that it gives me? So I want to take these Negro spirituals, these ideas of Negro spirituals, which are a legacy of great political and spiritual rebellion in this country, that are often handed down to um, black men, black queer men, um, to pass on. And what does it mean to be passed on the mantle of this great legacy? And how does one make individual moves or individual growth in within that legacy?
It's a show about young black boys, which is really the thing, honestly, the thing that really just attracted me the most. It's like, it's a show where we're really just experiencing young black boys and we're all together and how we interact and how us with different beliefs and different lives react. And so everyone's bringing their own, twist and turn to what they, because, we all read the play beforehand with our own thoughts of what each person would do and what they would thought. So it's nice to see what everybody actually brings when they bring it to life, and it's amazing. So we're working in there, we're working every day, and I'm loving it so far, yeah.
How did you learn about the show? Can you tell us a little bit about AJ?
Oh, AJ, he is what I would like to call an empath. He's super empathetic in terms of just like how people are feeling and how they, walk about a space. And he's just very observant and sort of to himself out in the public. But when he's in the room with his best friend Ferris, he can be kind of a clown, and he's sort of shedding his his the ways that males are being taught in regular society. He's shedding that
Toxic masculinity.
exactly that toxic masculinity off at a very young age. Like, you don't really hear high school students being able to put themselves in someone else's shoes who's different than them and who somewhat sort of excommunicated from society. He's able to put himself in their shoes and be like, oh, okay, you're a person, we're different, but we still you're a good person. You have a good heart.
Tell us a little bit about Nick.
Nick is playing Junior Davis in Choir Boy on Broadway. I've been with the piece since 2010-ish. Tarell was writing this piece, and it existed in like 30 pages at a time. And it was realized back in 2013. And since then, as the world has turned, the script has adapted as well to, meet it there.
Right. And how did you both come to, I guess, to be in the show?
Do you want to talk about your experience?
Sure. Oh.
You can take this.
No. So I saw the off-Broadway production of Choir Boy, which Nick was in and was wonderful in. And I loved the piece then. And so I wanted to find a way that one day I could be a part of it. I didn't know how, I didn't know when. But a couple of years after that, I actually ended up doing a regional production in Washington, D.C. at the Studio Theater of it. And I just fell even more deeply in love with the piece. That was a couple of years ago. Developed a relationship with Tarell through that. Did some other pieces with him, and then auditioned for the Broadway production of Choir Boy, and here we are today.
Here you are. Yeah, it's very seldom that you see, every facet of yourself as a black man on stage. And I think that Choir Boy literally taps on every part of that, the hyper-masculine, the hyper-effeminate, the confused, the fun, the rambunctious, the bully, the aggressor. So I think that that's what's beautiful. It doesn't just choose one piece of our blackness.
It's sort of, probably the greatest privilege and honor of my career to direct this show. I several years ago, I saw a play by Tarell Alvin McCraney at the Vineyard called Wig Out 4 times because I was so obsessed with his talent and his point of view and his sensibility. And I almost bordered on a kind of crazy stalker, you know what I mean? Because I was like, I'm just obsessed with your artistry, and in my dream universe, one day I'll be able to direct one of your plays. And because he is a kind, compassionate human being, he was like, all right, fine, I'll give you Choir Boy, you know?
Could you tell us a little bit about your vision for the show and his, and marrying the two together?
Absolutely. The play is about a young man who is the lead of the choir at a school called the Charles R. Drew Preparatory School for Boys, an all African American, all boys school. And he happens to be wildly gifted and also deeply effeminate. And the show is about sort of how, as an institution, it the Charles Drew Preparatory School for Boys cannot find room to give him space to let him be himself, and the sort of tension between his prodigious talent and the way in which his self-expression is shunned and criticized within the structure of this institution is sort of forms the meat of the story. I think it's about
Yeah, a little bit of that. I think Bobby operates from a place of feeling as though he has been wronged. So it's there, and again, it's like the whole thing with the show is what are the subconscious systemic things that are in place that oppress people, right? So I think Bobby operates from a place of, well, I'm not getting what I want, and I feel like as legacy to this prep school that I should be getting those things, and here this person is in my way. So for me as an actor to be able to play that thing, I just have to see it as whatever Ferris's choices were, he's in my way. So I need to make sure that he's no longer in my way. And I think that again, but it's like when the systemic thing that you're not conscious of starts to bleed in, yeah, a lot. That's where I think that toxicity comes from, right? If you're like trying to break that word down and understand what that means. For Bobby, it's far beyond what he is even conscious of, and that's what's dangerous. And I hope people kind of see that and understand that the danger in it is when it's subconscious, right? Versus overtly shaming or wanting someone gone just because of their sexual orientation or what they look like or how they behave.
I mean, so in the show, there are these five boys. Two of them, you find out. Well, I shouldn't say anything about that. But I feel like toxic masculinity permeates a lot of different areas of society, and it affects truly everybody. I don't know, even straight men who may not feel like they need to be toxic or may not feel like they need to be hypermasculine end up feeling like they have to because of social pressures. So I think when you add being gay on top of that, or maybe that doesn't make you effeminate, but if you are gay and effeminate and you feel like you have to have locker room talk, you feel like you have to talk about girls, all these things that are not true to who you are, it just makes navigating life harder. So I think that unless you are naturally that person, like a Gaston or someone who comes out right out of the gate, who maybe have a father that influences them to be that way, I think it's very difficult. And I think Gaston, Beauty and the Beast, he's a perfect example of toxic masculinity. He'd be a good Gaston. So yeah, I think that no good really comes from it, and I think that this show will start that conversation, hopefully starting in the Black community and then going out from there,
Well, tell us about, because I've heard a lot about him from like I guess he's coming in kind of disturbing the status quo per se.
Yeah, I think he's not coming in as your norm student. He is asking for space. He is asking to be respected for who he is, all that he is. And that is kind of Ferris's journey in this play. He's struggling with just being respected and loved and kind of seen. So I think the play kind of just brings up a bigger question of what is it to be a man, and really specifically, what is it to be a Black man? And how do these institutions, groom our next generation to be the best that they can be, they being them individuality, for sure.
That's a good answer. Does this resonate for you personally?
Yeah, I did this role back in 2013 off Broadway. And it was my first job in New York City. And I think I related to Ferris just being, excited to be on stage, but very anxious and nervous. And I had a lot of questions just moving to the city, and I was able to ask Chuck Cooper and Tarell, what it was like and just what life was. I felt alone in that moment, but to be back 5 years later, to feel, stronger in just who I am and what messages I want to tell in this industry and who I want to be. in the world, and just giving people that space and giving people that opportunity to be seen. So I feel like, I'm kind of asking the audience to kind of give me that, just, as well, kind of like what Ferris asked. He's like, just see me, see my cast, see this group of, incredible black men on stage who are striving to be excellent on stage and off stage.
How do you think it's going to have the most impact on?
It's going to have the most impact if we get young black people to come see it. I think that's the most important impact. We need black people to come to Broadway, see this, and I hope that happens. It's also going to have a big impact if non-young black people come see it, because it's important for people to see a different perspective of things. Said earlier, I think we all know what Tarell is capable of, and this is just another example of that. And he has a way with words that's just rich, important, intricate, layered, and on top of all of that, on top of these beautiful characters and on top of this beautiful acting, there's beautiful music. And shouts to Jason Michael Webb, because in some way he's made the music a character of itself, because it guides the story so beautifully, with how we can interpret the songs, how we sing the songs, how we sing them together. It's just like, it's a whole different animal, and everybody should come see this, especially young black people. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about how T.D. Jakes just recently had this sermon about the fierce urgency of now, and I think the fierce urgency of now. Look it up on YouTube. No, and I think there's something fierce and urgent about this play and the message about acceptance and us needing to be able to embrace each other and learning from these schoolboys, and how we can't tell our young people to act a certain way when we can't even treat each other as grown people like how we want our kids to behave. So it's a really, really urgent message, and we have to get it. We have to get it.